today with John Mihalko of Lakewood, Colorado, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, John, can you start us off with some background on yourself? To begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born on June 6, 1947, in a small, very patriotic town in New Jersey called Whippany.
Okay. And did you grow up there?
Oh yeah, born and raised.
Okay. And how many kids were in your family?
5.
And where were you in the sequence?
I was the middle kid. My father died when I was very young. He's a World War II vet. He was only 45 when he died, and he left 5 kids. And he left my mother a widow at age 40 with 5 kids.
Okay. And what did she do then at that point?
She was, she was a waitress in a diner most of her life. And you know, waitresses don't make a lot of money, so as we grew up, we got jobs and gave my mother money to keep the house going.
Mm-hmm. Now, did she remarry, or did she just?
No, she never remarried.
Just looked after you.
Yeah,
okay.
She buried 3 men, but my father and 2 boyfriends, but no, she never remarried.
All right. Now, when did you finish high school?
Wow. Well, I was supposed to graduate in 1965, but I was having so much fun, I stayed another year. I graduated in 1966.
All right. And then once you finished high school, what did you do?
I got into warehousing, and that's been my career up until the present.
All right. And how long was it between the time that you finished school and when you got drafted?
3 years.
Okay. Now, over the course of that time, were you expecting maybe to get drafted, or did you just not think about it?
Oh, I thought about it. My buddy wanted me to enlist in the Navy with him, but I didn't want to do 4 years because I had a good civilian job, and I knew that's where I was going to go back to the same company. So, he said, well, you're going to get drafted in the Army. I says, well, that's the way it goes.
Okay. Now, when did you get your draft notice?
I had to report August 18th, 1969.
All right. Now, at that point, how much did you know about what had been going on over in Vietnam?
Oh, a lot. Yeah. When the Marines landed in 1965 in Da Nang, I wanted to quit high school and join because I figured that war is going to be over in no time. And when the Marines are there, it's going to be over. But my mother and my oldest sister says, you're not doing anything till you graduate high school. So then when I finally did get out of high school, I lucked into this job that's been my career for the rest of my life. So, but I knew what was going on. 1966 came and went, we were still there. 67 came and went, we were still there. 68. And then in 69, I said, wow, we've been there 4 years and we're still there. I mean, there's something wrong. But then in 69, that's when I got my tour.
And so what was your reaction when you finally got the draft notice?
Well, I knew it was coming. I had to take my physical in May of 69, and then within like 30 days, I got the notice that, gave me the date where I went to report. So, I was curious to say the least, but, I went.
Now, when you went and did the physical and the initial screenings and things like that, and getting the medical test or whatever, were there people who were trying to find ways to beat the system?
Oh, yeah. It didn't matter.
Okay. What kind of things did they try?
They would say they were either alcoholics, drug addicts, gay. It didn't matter. If you were overweight, you were going in. If you were underweight, you were going in. If you walked in with a seeing eye dog, you were going in. I was underweight. I should have never been taken. I was in.
But in a different year, they might have.
I only know about my.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay. Now, where did they send you then for basic training?
I got lucky. I got Fort Dix, which is in New Jersey. I was supposed to go to Fort Bragg, but when they were going, telling you where you were going, I had to go to the bathroom. And when I came back, the guy says, "Well, where are you going?" I says, "I don't know." He said, well, "Where were you sitting?" I pointed. There was somebody else in there, and he says, "Okay, you can go to Dix." But what they did was they went down the line. The first guy, "Okay, you're going to Bragg. You're going to Dix. Bragg, Dix, Bragg, Dix." And they did the same thing in North Carolina. They were sending North Carolina guys to Fort Dix. We were sending Jersey guys to Fort Bragg.
All right.
I can't understand it.
When you got then to Fort Dix, what did you learn about the guys you were training along with? You had some from North Carolina or whatever. Were they mostly East Coast people who were there?
I think so, yeah.
All right. And what kind of sort of ethnic mix was there? Were there black soldiers?
Oh, yeah. You name it. They were all there.
Okay. And did you notice anything in terms of the age ranges of these guys?
No.
Okay.
In basic training, you don't get time to think. I mean, you're up to crack of dawn, you go out on night maneuvers, and
What did basic training consist of for you?
a little bit of everything, but in my opinion, the only thing that I really learned was the M16, which I didn't get till my last week of basic training. I trained on M14,
Mm-hmm.
and they're using M16s in Vietnam. Didn't make any sense.
How much emphasis was there on discipline and following orders?
Hardly any. We never had a barracks inspection. I thought it was going to be like there was a movie out that Jack Webb starred in called The DI. It was about basic training. That's what I thought the military was.
But not at Fort Dix.
To me, it was a joke. See, growing up in Whippany, New Jersey, we played Army all the time when we were kids. I mean, and we were always out in the woods. My house was surrounded by woods, and so living in the jungle and stuff like that, not a big deal. But as far as what they really taught us, I didn't get much out of it, believe me.
And did you have any idea of what the background of the drill instructors were? Were those men who had been to Vietnam?
Some of them. Well, actually, the drill instructors, I don't think they were, but a lot of the cadre were Vietnam vets.
All right. Okay, so how long then does basic training last?
Started in August and we graduated in October. It was roughly 3 months.
Okay. And what do you do after that?
Well, then you're supposed to get a leave and go home and then report back, and then they would send you to your AIT, but they wouldn't let any of us off the base. Matter of fact, the day after graduation, my sister was getting married and she wanted me to give her away at her wedding. They wouldn't let me off the base.
Did they offer any explanation of that?
Nope. I think they were afraid of desertions. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I had to sit on Fort Dix for 3 days doing nothing. And then they put us on a bus, bussed us to, I don't know which airport we went to. No, they bussed us to Philadelphia, and we got on a civilian jet in Fort Lewis, Washington.
Now, did you get an AIT?
Oh yeah, that's where I took my jungle training.
Okay.
In the dead of winter in Fort Lewis, Washington. Doesn't make sense.
No, what?
The terrain was definitely, because we were in the mountains all the
Okay.
time, and that's where I ended up in Vietnam. But the weather was, I couldn't get my head in the jungle training, when it's snowing and it rains constantly in Fort Lewis. But there, at least I got an M16 right from day one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was basically the same type of training, but you did a little more of it. That was a little better.
Okay. Now, was this just general infantry jungle training, or was it more specialized?
No, it's just general stuff.
Okay.
Basically the same stuff you did in basic, you just did a little more of it.
All right. Now, was this physically demanding work?
No, I don't think so. Because working in warehousing, that's a physical job anyway. So.
Okay, so you were in good enough shape that that kind of thing wasn't a big problem for you. All right. How long then does the IAT last?
Another 3 months.
Okay. Now, do you get to go home at that point?
Then I did. Then I got a 2-week leave. Yeah, we started on October 18th and we graduated December the 18th.
So you get to go home for Christmas.
Then I got to go home. I think they gave me 10 days. But I took about 20 because we already had our orders from Vietnam, and I said to myself, what are they going to do to me? I'm going to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. And when did you have to report back to Fort Lewis?
Fort Lewis again.
Okay. And when you got back, was there any question about where you had been?
No, I had to go to courts and boards. I didn't say anything, do anything. And within a couple of days, and they issued us jungle fatigues in Fort Lewis, and we were on a plane off to Vietnam.
All right. Did they fly you in a chartered commercial jet or a military plane?
No, it was commercial jet. Yeah.
Okay. So they had like stewardesses on it and that sort of thing?
And the flight over is really bad because the stewardesses hardly smile because, they're looking at guys that are going to war and they're thinking, this guy might get killed. And we're the same way. We're sitting there. You could hear a pin drop in an airplane.
Right. Did you stop any place on the way or just fly?
Hawaii. They let us off the plane in the Hawaii airport, dressed in our jungle fatigues and, with people staring at you, the civilians, and then back on the plane, and then we landed in Guam to refuel. and that was scary. Guam was the hottest. That was hotter than Vietnam. I couldn't believe it. There's an island in the middle of the Pacific. When they opened that door, it was just a blast of hot air. I said, man, if Vietnam is hotter than this ain't going to be good.
So what was your reaction when you actually got off the plane in Vietnam?
Well, we landed in Cam Ranh Bay, and the United States built that port, and it's beautiful. That had a larger PX than the PXs here in the States. You could buy a car there, and when you got home, it would be at your house. I'm telling you. I never saw a PX that big.
And did you stay there any amount of time, or did they ship you out?
1 day.
Okay.
1 day.
Now,
Because it's all paperwork. You know, I thought once we landed, you got off the plane, they were going to hand you a rifle and a helmet, and you were going out. No, it's just endless paperwork. Endless paperwork at Cam Ranh Bay. Then they flew us to Phu Bai, and then there was more paperwork there. Then we went to Camp, I think we went to Camp Eagle, and then from Camp Eagle to Camp Evans. And Camp Evans, that's when I found out I was going to be in the 3rd Brigade, and then for a 2nd of the 506.
All right. And then which company did they put you in?
E Company, Echo Company.
All right. And then within that...
And now here's another aside to that. See, E Company in any infantry battalion is the mortar platoon. You know, I don't know one end of a mortar from another. I'm going to be in a mortar platoon? I mean, you know. But E Company also has your reconnaissance platoon, which I didn't know about,
Mm-hmm.
and LZ cutters and snipers. And when I got to E Company, like I said, I thought I was going to be in a mortar platoon. And this young sergeant comes out and he says, you guys are lucky. And there was like, I think 12 new guys at the time. And he said, you get to pick what you're going to be in. So one guy raises his hand. I wasn't going to raise my hand for anything. I've been in the Army long enough. One guy raises his, and he says, you have your choice of Recon or mortar, not mortars, LZ cutter. So one guy raises his hand and says, well, what's an LZ cutter? And he says, well, that's a good deal. You only go out to the jungle 1 day, and you rappel out of a helicopter with a chainsaw and 100 pounds of C4 strapped on your back, and you blow the top off a mountain. I'm sitting there, I'm going, that doesn't sound good to me. So another guy raises his hand, what's Recon? He says, that's even better. He says, you go out to the jungle for 1 week at a time. You don't have to wear a helmet. That's one of the status symbols of Recon. You get to wear camouflage fatigues, but we don't have any right now. And you carry everything you own on your back, and your job is to look for the bad guys. So then everybody raised their hand and said, we'll take Recon.
All right. Of course, I don't know, that didn't occur to them that the bad guys might try to shoot them?
Oh, it occurred to us, but rappelling out of a helicopter at 200 feet with a chainsaw and 100 pounds of C4, nobody there to protect you, that doesn't sound good to me.
All right. So Recon at that point is a better deal.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, having made that particular choice, then what do they do with you?
Well, we had to wait. It was a couple days before all the recon teams were out in the jungle. So we did a little rappelling and stuff like that. And the recon platoon came in, I think, after about 2 days. And they were coming down the company area. I never saw such dirty, grubby guys in my life. But they were happy to see us. And it was a good experience. Met my first platoon leader, teenager. He scared the hell out of me because he was a lot younger than me. But he was a very good platoon leader.
All right. How many men do you think were in that platoon that came in?
Oh, when I first got there, we had 5 8-man teams.
Mm-hmm.
When I left, we had 2 10-man teams.
Okay. Well, did the group of guys you were with, did that fill them out to the 5 8-man teams?
Yeah.
So you're replacing. So basically,
Yeah.
you've got 40. So you've actually got a roughly full-strength platoon, at least when you start.
Yeah.
All right. Now, once they come in, do you spend a few days in base camp, or do you, while they get
We
cleaned
went
up?
out. See, a stand down for recon is only 1 day. So they came in, and then the next day, you're out again.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to meet my platoon leader. He assigned me to Bravo team. Got to meet my team leader, and then the next day, boom, out you went.
All right. Did they do anything to get you oriented or give you any advice before you headed out, or did they just say, just do what we do?
Oh yeah. Well, luckily the guys in recon are very, very tight, And the old guys would come up, they'd show you, you know, because they just dump all the seat rations and lerps in front of you, and I'd ask him, how much do I take? He said, you can take as much as you want. And he just pick through what you want, load it up, and he says, remember, you got to carry it all. And so, yeah, so I had food stuffed in my pockets, rucksack. I couldn't get up. I couldn't move. I had to jettison some of it.
Do you have a sense of how much your total pack weighed by the time you loaded up?
About 90 pounds.
Okay. And how much did you weigh at the time?
138.
All right. And about how hot was it?
Very. I don't know the temperature, but it had to be well up into the 90s with 100% humidity. I don't know. It was brutally hot.
But this was good.
As soon as
work.
when you got out to the jungle, got on your feet and started walking, I don't think you went 10 yards. You were already dripping with sweat.
All right. And your first patrol, I mean, you said you're out for a week at a time. So were you out for a full week that first time?
We were out 2 weeks. We got socked in.
Okay.
And actually, most of my missions lasted 2 weeks. They said a week, but when it started raining and you got socked in, you were out there. Yeah, our missions lasted roughly 2 weeks every time.
Okay.
The longest I was out in the jungle was 44 days. That's 44 days without a shower, shave, or change of clothes.
All right. What do you remember about that first trip out in the jungle?
Not too much. It was routine patrol. I don't know how many clicks we went. It was hard keeping up with the other guys. I'm a new guy, and they put me on rear security, the last guy. So I knew I had to keep turning around, look and see if we're followed. Then when I turned around again, I couldn't see anybody, so I'd have to hustle to catch up to them. I didn't like rear security.
How long did you have to do that?
Only 2 missions.
Mm-hmm.
My second mission out was my first firefight.
So on the first mission you're going through, were you wondering where everybody was, or were you just happy you weren't being shot at?
Oh yeah, well, I don't, you know, it's hard to remember. I remember some things about the first mission. Luckily, they had me set up with an old-timer. He was nice. He showed me how to do the claim, which we did in basic and AIT anyway, but he showed us the sneaky way to do it and the right way to do it. So, you know, the old-timers were good.
Okay. When you're out on one of these patrols, you're out overnight multiple times, but you're moving every day. Yeah. Okay. What do you do when you're just set up overnight? How does that work?
We try to set up in like a circle, and we'd have 2-man positions. You would actually sleep with your partner. One of us would use his poncho for the floor, what we slept on, and the other guy would use his to make a little roof, like sort of like a tent.
Mm-hmm.
You'd sleep under there, and they gave us and it got very cold at night in the jungle. People don't realize that. I mean, we froze at night. It got cold, and the wind was always blowing, and you go to bed soaking wet. I mean, you don't. The only time you dry off is in your sleep. But they gave us, it was like a sweater, a lightweight sweater. We would put that on, and we had a poncho liner that was our blanket, which was very warm. But that was it.
All right. Now, what time would you set up? Before dark or after dark? Or?
Right around dusk.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't like to move around at night, because if there was no moon, you couldn't see anything anyway. You couldn't see rain in front of your face.
All right. Now, when you're camped overnight, I mean, you mentioned you're
and you have
sleeping.
full guard duty every night.
Sort of your 2-man teams, and you trade off who's awake and who gets to sleep.
No, we pick who's going to take first watch, second watch, etc. See, if you had an 8-man team, then you only had to pull 1 watch.
Okay.
First watch and last watch was the best. Because you had last watch and you got 7 hours sleep.
Right.
But nobody ever slept the full 8 hours. I mean, either a rock would poke you in the side or a piece of, because you had to hack part of the jungle to lay down in. So you were never comfortable.
How long did it take to kind of get used to sleeping in the jungle, or learn which sounds to worry about and which ones not to?
No, there were no sounds. I never heard birds chirping, nothing. The jungle, it's very, very beautiful, but the animals and birds and things like that, when humans move in, they move out. I cannot recall hearing any kind of... I did hear a tiger roar one night. That scared the hell out of me. I didn't know they had tigers in Vietnam. But we were on the top of a mountain. He was somewhere down in the valley, but that thing echoed and reverberated. That was very scary.
All right. You said nice, but the mission ends and did you encounter any enemy on the first one at all? No? Were there any booby traps or things like that? So just really quiet. Okay, then tell me about the second one then. Now you do get into firefight.
The second mission, we had our platoon leader with us, teenager, the young guy. And as soon as we got off the LZ, we started, there was a trail leading off the LZ and we were going down into a valley. Again, I was under rear security. They saw sandal prints. You know, the North Vietnamese didn't wear boots, they wore sandals made out of American tires. So you would see the print and you might be able to read Goodrich or, but I didn't get to see the sandal prints because being the last guy, everybody's walking over them. But the guy in front of me turned around and he says, we got footprints in a trail. And we found, there was also an old pineapple grenade from World War II was like half buried in a trail. And I don't know if it was booby trapped or anything, but the guy in front of me says, watch out, you know, step over the grenade and this and that. So then when we got to the bottom, we had to cross there was a little river, stream. We crossed that to the other side and our platoon leader was very excited. He says, I want to call up and set up an ambush, but I got to get an okay, you know. See, Recon, they did not want us to make contact because we're such in small numbers and we carried no M60s, nothing like that. They just wanted us to find the bad guys, report it, and then get out, okay? But our platoon leader, he says, this is good, man. We're gonna. So he called up higher, I don't know, I guess he called Battalion, and he convinced them to let us stay down there and set up an ambush. And we did. It took us about 2 days, but I wasn't on that ambush, but the other new guy, he was on that day he was out there. I think it was like February 11th, 1970. And he was just sitting there looking around, and one lone NVA soldier carrying a big bag of rice crossed the stream, and he shot him, he got him. So that made the lieutenant very, very happy, you know. Yeah, that guy, he had a big bag of rice, man. He was going to feed a whole bunch of people. So anyway, what we did was, there was a sandbar in the middle of the stream, and we put his body on the sandbar, and we put a live grenade under him with the pin pulled in case, because the North Vietnamese, they come back and look for their dead just like we do. So we figured, now we've got bait. So the platoon leader, he was very happy. But nothing happened for 3 days. And I would go out on the ambush, you know, we'd keep changing the ambush teams. And after 3 days, the body was starting to bloat up, and, you know, the bugs were on it, and smelling pretty nasty. But on Valentine's Day, 1970, that's when it hit the fan. And I was on that ambush that day, and I was staring at the body, and I'm thinking about home and saying, wow, today's Valentine's Day. All my buddies back home, they're going out with their girlfriends, giving them candy, whatever, and the guys that are married, you know, they're thinking about their wives. Here I am staring at a dead body, hoping more of his buddies come out so we can kill them too. And it's exactly what happened.
So they walked right into the ambush?
They're very, very smart. One guy walked out from the other side of the stream and he saw his buddy immediately and he went right back in. You know, he was just out and we waited. And it was like, had to be like 10, 15 minutes, and he poked his head out again. And he came out and he got into the water. And very, very slowly he started approaching his buddy. He got out about a couple of feet, and all of a sudden there was another guy came out. And then another guy. And then another guy. We had like 5 or 6 of them in the water. We only had like 3 or 4 guys on the ambush. We're already outnumbered. And all we got is M16s. And yeah, there was like 5 of them. So then finally, one of the veterans, one of the old-timers on our group, he thought that one of them saw him. So we just opened up, dropped them all. It was over in less than 3 seconds. That's one thing I remember from AIT. They said a perfectly executed ambush should be over in under 3 seconds. He said if it takes longer, you're probably going to lose. And this was over in like 3 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003. They were all dead. The water was red, blood, oh man. So then what we had to do was strip them. We had to get the bodies, get them out of the water onto the land. And we were supposed to take everything they had, even their underwear. But we weren't going to do that. We'd leave the guy some dignity. But they wanted all that stuff because they can get a lot of intelligence from it. You know, was the uniform new? Was it old? the weapon, what kind of condition it was in. I mean, we took everything except their underwear. And then while that was going on, all of a sudden, we didn't know it, there was a whole lot more of them behind them. They started firing RPGs at us. And it's the first time I ever heard an RPG, scared the hell out of me. And it was taking off tops of trees, which told me that they were coming down the side of the mountain. They were still too high up. They were just firing blind.
Mm-hmm.
So they battalion inserted a line company behind us, and they came to our rescue.
Now, did you pull back yourselves or just stay where you were?
No, I stayed on our, on the shoreline.
Mm-hmm.
We had the bodies and all that. We dragged them, and we just started firing at them, even though we couldn't see anything. But they weren't in any hurry to cross that stream, and we weren't in any hurry to have them come across that stream.
Right.
I don't know how many of them there were, but they were firing a lot of RPGs, which tells me there was a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
See, what the NVA used to do, if they were moving in large numbers, they would send out a small patrol out in front to lead the way. And if the small patrol ran into anything, they could tell by the fire we're given if they were up against a large force or a small force. And there was only 3 of us, 3 or 4 of us shooting, so they knew there weren't a lot of Americans there.
Mm-hmm.
So then they came up and opened up with everything they had.
So with a short ambush, maybe one of the advantages is it's harder for them to tell what you have.
Yeah. Like I said, they took their time getting into that water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but we got every one of them. They didn't have a chance.
Right. Then you go back. Did you go back to base camp at that point, or
The next day.
Okay.
The next day. We had to spend the night, but we had the line company out there.
Mhm.
They were around us, security and everything. And they were looking at us, those poor guys, and they were saying, "What the hell did you get us into now?" Because they were looking at all the bodies. I mean, the water was just red, bright red, and they were going, "What did you get us into now?" So we can't help it.
All right. Now, after this patrol, then you just go back to base camp for one day.
One day,
go
and
out
you're
again?
out again.
Okay. Now, you mentioned before that you were rear security the first 2 patrols. After that, what did you do?
The team leader asked me to walk point, and I said, "What's this guy, crazy? I'm still a new guy." But actually, I wasn't. I was already in my first firefight. I was put up for the Bronze Star with a V, got my CIB. So I figured, well, I guess I can do it if he has faith in me. And I walked point from then on, day in, day out, for the rest of my tour. And after that, I became assistant team leader. And then when he left, I was the team leader, and I still walk point.
All right.
Nobody wants to walk point.
Okay.
Nobody. It's the most dangerous job there is.
So why were you doing it then?
Well, I'm a little guy, number one, and I was born and raised in the woods. The woods, the jungle didn't,
So
I didn't like it, but I knew nobody else wanted to do it, and I figured I was the best qualified for the job.
What skills do you need to do that job well?
You have to have a good slack man, the guy that's walking right behind you. And I had my slack man walk like that far behind me. And if I was looking straight ahead, I wanted him looking from side to side. And if I was looking down, I wanted him to be looking straight ahead. You have to work in tandem.
Wasn't the standard advice not to bunch up or not to have guys together?
Oh, yeah. I don't care. 4 eyes are better than 2.
All right. And then, did you normally walk on the trails?
Oh, yeah, we did.
Okay. Now, with what frequency?
See, our job, we have to be quieter than the line companies.
Mhm.
And if you're breaking brush going through the jungle, you can be heard. Well, we walk the trails all the time because
Okay.
you're not making any noise.
Now, how common was it for them to be booby trapped?
The NVA, I'll give them credit, they didn't booby trap a lot. They might booby trap an LZ, especially a fresh LZ, because then they knew GIs were coming in. But as far as punji pits and all that, no, they didn't do that. Matter of fact, the NVA looked down on the VC. The NVA were very proud. They were professional soldiers, just like the American GIs. The VC, they were just farmers carrying a rifle. They looked down on the VC. And I learned that from my NVA Scout. He would tell us, "Oh, he's VC, number 10, NVA, oh, he good.
Okay. Now, was the NVA Scout with your unit when you joined it, or did he come in later?
Shortly afterwards, yeah.
And you got to know him fairly well over the course of
very
time.
well.
What did you learn about him?
He was very well educated. The North Vietnamese as a whole are very well educated. South Vietnamese are not. The North Vietnamese are taught American history. He knew a lot of our American presidents. He was an amazing young man. I don't know how old he was. He didn't really speak a lot of English, and I couldn't speak any Vietnamese, but we could communicate. I learned a lot from that guy. I liked him. I trusted him.
And did he tell you anything about his family or about how he wound up on your side?
He told me he came from a family. He had 5 brothers, and he said they were all in the NVA. And I don't know where he fit in that family, but he said his oldest brother was a colonel. And he said, if the Americans leave, the North Vietnamese, they are going to come, they're going to take over the country. And he says, my own brother's going to kill me.
Did he explain what he was doing being on your side?
No, I never asked him. I did ask him why he came over to our side, and he held up one finger. He says, number 1, B-52s. He said all the NVA were terrified of the B-52s, and rightfully so, because you can't see them, hear them, nothing. All of a sudden, the earth disintegrates. They were terrified of B-52s. And then he held up 2 fingers. He says, number 2, America never loses. That's what he told me.
That's what he learned in his history class.
I don't know if he learned it in his history class, but that's what he deduced from it. He said America never loses.
Okay. Now, how effective or useful was he when you're on patrol?
Well, in the Ripcord book, my team discovered a North Vietnamese telephone line, and we tapped it. He's the one that found the line. And I'm a good point man, and I missed it. My slack man missed it. Everybody missed it. But it was camouflaged, very, very well. He's the one that found it. And he turned white as a ghost. He was holding it up, and he said, Buku NVA, Didi Mao. He was terrified. He wanted out of there.
What does Didi Mao mean?
It means get out.
Oh, okay.
Leave. And see, a recon, when we're in the jungle, we never talk. If we talk at all, we whisper. We never talk like we're talking now. Even if we think we're in a safe area, we still do not talk. We whisper at all times. But he was getting very loud. I mean, and then when he saw me, because I heard all this noise behind me, and I didn't know I was starting to go up the side of another mountain, and I heard this racket, and I turned around, and he's holding the wire, and he saw me, he said, John, Buku NVA, Didi Mao, Didi, and he kept saying, I had to put my hand over his mouth, and now I'm getting scared. So he found the telephone line.
All right. Let's go back a little bit. How many patrols did you go on, or roughly?
In my whole tour, I don't know. That mission in July, it was my 13th time to the jungle. After that, I don't know. I did between 25, 30. I don't know.
Does that kind of work take its toll on you, physically or mentally?
Yeah, both. I mean, the helicopter flight out, nobody talks. You're deep involved, and you think, is this the time I'm not coming back? You know what I mean? The flight back, though, everybody's happy. Once you jump on that bird, everybody's smiling and happy. But yeah, it takes its toll mentally and physically too. I mean, my knees bother me all the time. That's from carrying all that weight. I've got arthritis. That's from sleeping on the cold, wet ground all the time. I mean, yeah, physically it takes its toll. But it doesn't happen overnight. I remember, like on my second time out, I noticed, the old timers when they got up, it took them like 10 minutes before they could straighten out and everything. And I'd laughed at them. I was teasing them. I said, guys, I'm 3 years older than you. They said, wait 6 months, you're going to be just like us. And it's true.
All right. On what proportion of your patrols did you actually make contact with the enemy, do you think?
Oh, geez, I don't know. We had more than our share of firefights, but to put a number on it, I don't know.
Yeah. That's sort of most of the time, or is it over half, or hard to tell?
No, I don't even think it was half. Maybe a third at a time, maybe a little more. I don't know.
Okay. What was the worst one that you got into that you can recall?
The one I got shot.
Okay.
The second worst one was the time we had to go to retrieve American bodies. I'd never seen a dead American. Saw a lot of dead North Vietnamese, but never saw a dead American.
And was that before Ripcord or after?
No, it was during the whole Ripcord episode, but it took place on the Triple Hills. We had 3 of our recon teams were basically within a click of each other, and one of our teams detected North Vietnamese all around them, and they got hit. And they had two wounded guys. So they called in a Medevac, and then the team leader, the Medevac was on its way out, but he told them, we're still in contact. Don't wait for he said, wait for the Cobras to get there. But I think the Medevac people were the bravest people in the world. This guy wasn't waiting. He heard there's 2 wounded Americans. He came out. He didn't wait for the Cobra escorts. And there was no place to land, so they lowered the jungle penetrators. And you know what that is, correct?
Well, but you should explain that for the benefit of the audience here.
Jungle penetrator, they could do it 2 ways. They could, if the man was unconscious, they would lower down a basket. It was called a Stokes litter basket, and you would load them in the basket, and they would haul them up. If the wounded were ambulatory and they weren't that seriously wounded, they'd lower down. It was like a little seat. It opened up, and one guy would. They would send one from one side of the helicopter and one from the other, and they'd lower him down, and the guy would get on the seat, and they would hoist him up. But and they also had an explosive device, because a lot of times when they would raise it up, the wires would get caught in the foliage, so they could blow the cable so that the helicopter could get out of there. But our 2 wounded were ambulatory, and they lowered the 2 seats down. They got them on it, and as they were raising them up, they were maybe up about 3 feet. An NVA soldier with an RPG shot the Medevac, blew it out of the sky. Big ball of flame. The most heroic thing I ever saw was watching that thing explode, and the crew chief had the presence of mind to blow the cable before the round hit the helicopter. That guy knew he was going to die and everybody on the helicopter, but he had the presence of mind to he was thinking of the 2 guys coming up, my guys, and he blew the cables, and the guys fell down about 5 feet, but it was still okay. But watching that helicopter go down in a ball of flame, and then we got in a firefight. We got there. We did kill the NVA that blew up the helicopter. We killed another NVA, and we took 1 prisoner. But it was very somber indeed. And then the next day, and then they sent in a line company to help us out, in the firefight. And the next day, we got word that we had to go get the bodies. And I thought it was like the movies. They sent people out to do that, graves registration, whatever you want to call it. And we got to the helicopter, but even before you got to the helicopter, I could smell it right now. You could smell the death. It smelled like a barbecue. It was a very sweet but very thick smell. It even got in your mouth. You could taste it. And you knew, if you didn't know it was dead people, you would think this is a great smell of barbecue. But you knew it was dead and it were Americans. So it was very, very emotional. I can smell the smell right now. I can smell it. And we had to pull the bodies out, and they were frozen in position. And when we grabbed the arm, it fell off. They were burnt beyond recognition. They were like lumps of coal. And we got all 5 of them out into body bags, and we had to hump them to the nearest LZ. The strangest thing about that, we had them in the body bags, but the jungle was tearing at the bags. It was like the jungle did not want them to leave. And we'd have to stop every once in a while because a body part would fall out, and we'd have to put it back in. They were hard to carry, and then finally we decided, luckily they gave us a whole lot of body bags, because the first body bags the jungle was just tearing them to pieces. So we loaded those body bags in fresh body bags, and we tied the body bags, we cut down the trees, and we tied them on there, like the old African safaris with the dead animals. That's how we got them out. It seemed very undignified, and but it worked. The jungle, we had them on our shoulders now instead of, and so we got them to the LZ and loaded them. A helicopter came in, and we threw the bodies on. And when the helicopter left, they called back on the radio and they said, wait on the LZ for a while, and we did. And the people, the people that picked up the bodies were Medevac people themselves, and they knew the dead people. They came back out with a cold case of beer and gave it to us. See, first and only time I ever had a can of beer in the jungle. And they had it packed in ice and everything. And we also took the grenade launcher that shot down to Medevac, and we gave that to those guys. And, yeah, that was something. That was very, very sad. Dead Americans, man, burnt to a crisp.
All right. Over the course of the time that you were with your platoon, what kind of losses did your unit take?
Recon, we were very lucky. Well, number one, nobody in my team died. Nobody. I'm very proud of that. Like I said, I think a lot of it was because I was the point man and assistant team leader. If you were in my team, you lived. Everybody got the Purple Heart in the whole, except me. I turned down 3 Purple Hearts. So there was no blood, no pain. I don't want the medal.
All right. You did have at least one pretty close scrape, though, and you actually brought along that artifact here to show that. Can you explain what went on with that?
Yeah, that was on the Wiretap mission. I got shot at point-blank range by an enemy RPD machine gun, NVA machine gun. That's the equivalent of our M60. And I took a burst right in the chest, matter of fact, right in the heart. And my bandoliers saved my life. That much anymore. As you can see, it totally destroyed this magazine. I had to pull that one out and throw it away. The rounds continued into this magazine. And as you can see, the hole in the front, and there's the 2 heads of bullets coming out the other side. And the first question everybody asks me, whether they're a veteran or not, is, did you feel it? Did it knock you down? And I didn't feel it when it hit me. I didn't feel anything. It's just your natural reactions take over. I hit the ground, and while I was laying there, I heard all this noise coming out of my chest, and it was the bullets from the first magazine falling out. And when I looked down and saw the hole, that's when I realized I had been shot. And I laid on that LZ for I don't know how long. I knew my guys didn't leave me, but I couldn't see them, and I knew they were going to call in Cobra Air Support, but I still didn't know how I was going to get out of there because I was laying on a bald LZ with no cover. And to this day, I don't know why that North Vietnamese soldier didn't finish me off. I know he saw my chest explode, but maybe he thought I was dead, and like I said, I played dead.
And were you by yourself at this point?
I had my slack man with me. He was with me, but he didn't get shot. I was the only one that got shot. Like I said, we were just laying there. And my personal opinion is I think that North Vietnamese soldier was waiting for the rest of our guys to come across and try to retrieve our bodies. So that's why he didn't shoot at me anymore. That's what I think. I don't know. I did throw one grenade at the guy, and when I threw it, I cursed myself, because then I said, man, if this doesn't get him. Because I had no clue where he was. I couldn't see him. I had no idea where he was. But he had to be in a bunker, a well-dug bunker. And when I threw the grenade, I cursed myself. I said, because if this doesn't get him, he's definitely going to finish us off now. But he didn't. He didn't.
All right. Now, what role did your platoon play in the larger Ripcord operation? What kinds of things were you doing?
Well, and what I can tell you, with that ambush in February 1970, that alerted the whole battalion that the NVA were moving back out into our area in the mountains. So that was a valuable piece of, now what they did with all the stuff we sent in, they analyzed all that stuff. But we did a lot of, when we found bunker complexes, we would report them, tell them where they were, all of that stuff. When we captured stuff, we turned it in. We captured a lot of enemy weapons, destroyed a lot of rice. We found a lot of caches. But in the broad, I don't know.
Okay. Now, did you get ambushed yourselves, or parts of your platoon get ambushed?
That mission, the Wiretap mission, when I got hit. most of my firefights, we initiated the contact and they never knew we were there. A lot of times we'd catch them, they'd be sitting down eating rice. They had no guards out checking things. We'd walk right in on them while they were eating rice.
Now, what you're referring to is the wiretap mission. Was this actually going back to that line that your scout had captured to try to tap it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And what happened when you went out and did that?
Well, we found the line on our first day. Once we got out there, I found us a nice place to set up, and then we set up for the night. The next morning, as we were moving out, that's when our scout found the line.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, I don't know who gave the order. I don't know if it was Battalion or who, they wanted us to tap the line. I said to my team leader, I said, we don't have any equipment to tap a line. I figured once we found that line, our mission was over. They were going to pull us out here, and they send in the people that do all that stuff. My team leader said, they're going to send out the equipment to us. And I said, you got to be kidding. That means a helicopter is going to come right over our position and lower it. Every North Vietnamese in this is going to know right where we're at. But that's what they did. The helicopter came out every day. They would pick up what we took off the line and drop us down more stuff every day. And we didn't move for 3 days. Every night I thought we were going to get wiped out. But they never came looking for us. I don't know why. I have no idea.
But did you get ambushed going out, or?
On our last day, it was July 2nd. They said, okay, they gave us coordinates to a landing zone, and we had all day, that day to get there. They were going to pick us up the next morning. And I found a nice landing zone on the top of this mountain. I went up to the top of the mountain. It was real overgrown. You could see nobody had been up there in years. So I asked our team leader to call up and see if we could get picked up from there, because I knew that this was safe. But they insist we go to the LZ that they requested, and that's when we got to that one. That's when I got hit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, you mentioned we've been talking about you were hit with sort of the round that wound up in the magazine. Were you hit in other places?
No.
Okay. But did that just knock you out, or?
No.
Okay.
I didn't feel a thing.
Okay.
I heard the burst, and it's your instant reaction. You hit the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I looked behind me, and I saw the dirt being chewed up behind me, and I knew it wasn't. I knew it was an enemy machine gun because an AK has a very distinctive sound, and that wasn't it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like it was coming from behind me. That's why I was looking behind me, but it was in front of me. Sound is very funny out in the mountains. You really, and we're on the top, like I said, almost at the top of this mountain. And with the wind blowing, you really can't tell where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. All right. So after they take you out off of that LZ, do you get time in the rear?
Okay, I have to finish. Mm-hmm. Before we got out, now, I got out, the Cobras came, and I low-crawled backwards, and I even low-crawled across the dead North Vietnamese that we shot that initiated all this mess.
Mm-hmm.
And I got back to our guys, and I thought for sure that they were going to let us go back to the other LZ, because this is a hot LZ. I don't know how many NVA were on it, but there was a lot of them, a whole lot more than what we had. But they still insisted that we stay there because the helicopters, they're en route. Now, I'd already been shot, and I said, Junior, this is insanity. He says, well, they're on their way. And so he says, okay, who wants to volunteer to get on the helicopter first? I said, well, they already had the shot at me. I will. And I waited until I could see the helicopter coming, and me and my slack man, we went running out. I was almost in the exact same place where I was. The helicopter, I had a hold of its skid, and as soon as I grabbed the skid, the door gunner jumped up and went like this, and the helicopter left. And I ran back again. I said, Junior, what happened? He said, they shot the pilot. So the co-pilot had to get the...
Mm-hmm.
So then they finally relented and said we could go to the LZ that I picked out in the first place.
And did you make it back there safely?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That time I walked through security. Because this way I could see if anybody was following us. And I had the dead NVA's AK with me. I grabbed that. And we got out okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, once you get back, do you get any kind of break at that point, or is it just
1 day?
1 day and go back out?
And you're out again.
Now, did you get any longer breaks over the course of your tour?
Oh, yeah. They would rotate companies or platoons to Eagle Beach. I think I got to Eagle Beach 3 times, and you'd have a battalion stand down where the whole battalion comes in from the jungle. You'd get new uniforms, boots, you know. That didn't happen that often.
Mm-hmm.
My whole tour was basically in the jungle,
Right.
every day.
Now, when you did go to the rear, was that comfortable or relief or?
Yeah, you know, you got to unwind. You went to the EM club, and you know, you could drink beer. I think beer was 10 cents a can, and you know, but most of us were careful not to, you know, go crazy and really get drunk, because the next day you were going out. Didn't want to go out in the jungle with a hangover.
Now, when they went to the rear, did people in your unit use marijuana and things like that? Or?
I never saw it, but I could smell it.
Now, in the field, did they do things
No.
like that?
No.
Or did they even smoke cigarettes in the field?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What would they do at night?
You didn't smoke at night. You could see. Your senses get so. You're like a blind man with his senses. You could see better. You can hear better. Like just a thing from a cigarette. You could see that so far away, and you could smell the tobacco. No, we didn't smoke at night at all.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
Okay.
Maybe, you know, but I'm only speaking about my team and Recon. I don't know about other.
Right. Okay. How would you rate or characterize the morale in your platoon during the time you were with it? What was the attitude of most of the guys?
We were upbeat. We were always cracking jokes, and we got very close to one another. I mean, it was a brotherhood. I mean, I was closer to the people on my team than I was to my own brother. Well, you could actually read their minds, and they could read your mind. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Now, were all the men in your unit white except for the Vietnamese guy?
No, we had a mixture of blacks. We had Chicano. We had everybody. We had boys from the south, boys from the north. We came from all over. I mean.
Right. And were you ever aware of racial tensions or things like that in the unit?
In the rear, you would see it, but never out in the field. Never in the jungle. Never.
And in the rear, was it just kind of self-segregation, black guys hang together?
Yeah. Well, you know, so a lot of times the southern guys would hang together, and yeah, there were problems in the rear. Well, there were a lot of problems in the rear. Sometimes I felt safer in the jungle. But as far as you know, our teams and everything, no, there was never any problems.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, we had a couple black guys in the recon platoon that they would hang with us when we got to the rear. Every once in a while they'd go visit if they had a buddy in one of the other companies. But yeah, it's a brotherhood. That's all I can say.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of attitude did you have towards your officers? Was there much of a gap between the officers and the enlisted men?
No. That's one good thing about the 101st. The officers get to pick which division they want to go to. We didn't. We would go wherever they send us. And a lot of the officers, they wanted the 101st Airborne, the 1st Cav. So most of our officers were very good. I liked all of our platoon leaders, our COs, but we didn't get to see them that much. You see, if you're in a line company, you know, you've got 4 platoons, you got 4 platoon leaders, so you saw your platoon leaders every day.
Mm-hmm.
In Recon, there's only 1 platoon leader, but there's 5 teams, so you would only see your platoon leader every 5th mission. So we were basically on our own.
Now, you said over the course of the year, the strength of the platoon eventually went down. You were losing guys who weren't getting replaced or rotating them out.
Well, the troop patrol was going on, you know, big time in 1970. So most of the guys we lost, like I said, Recon, we only lost 2 men the whole year that were killed in action. Mm-hmm. 2. And 1 was a platoon leader, and he was only with us for 2 days. I still cannot put a face on that man. He was only with us for 2 days. Mm-hmm. And we lost a point man from another team. That's the only 2 Recon guys that died. But, you know, we lost a lot. When they got wounded, mm-hmm. maybe they got sent somewhere else, and we weren't getting replacements. Just that simple.
Okay. Now, did you ever take an R&R anywhere beyond just?
Oh yeah, I went to Sydney.
Okay. And how did that process work? Do you sign up someplace or get to pick where you go?
You had a choice. I believe when I was there, you could go to Sydney, Bangkok, Thailand, Hong Kong, I think it was Hong Kong, or Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the married guys, naturally, they took Hawaii so they could see their wives. And, I'd always wanted to see Australia. I put in for Australia, and I got it. Matter of fact, I ran into one of the guys that was in Recon, but he re-upped to get out of the field, but I ran into him. What they would do is they'd fly you to Da Nang, and then from Da Nang you would go to wherever you were going.
Mm-hmm.
And there he was in Da Nang. I hadn't seen him for months and months. So we went on R&R together.
And what was there to do in Sydney?
Sydney was great. The Australians love Americans. They still do. The Australian women love American men. They do not like Australian men, but they love us. And matter of fact, they had a place, it was called King's Cross. It was a whole section, and they made you feel at home. They had one bar called the Texas Tavern. Great people. I loved Australia. Great people.
All right. Now, what was it like to have to get on a plane and go back to Vietnam after you finished that?
Yeah, that's why I didn't take my R&R till very late in my tour. A lot of guys after 2 months say, "Oh, I want to go on R&R," but then no, I went very late in my tour, and it was still hard. You know, once I got back, it's scary to go back out to the jungle. I mean, you know, clean sheets and drinking and women and having a good time in Australia. And now I'm back in the middle of nowhere. So that was kind of hard.
Yeah. Now, how much time did you have left in your tour when you got back?
2 months,
All right.
if that.
Now, toward the end of it, as you're getting short, do they do anything different with you or give you different assignments, or do you just stay
No.
with your unit the whole time?
Well, the way it was supposed to work, you were supposed to do 6 months in the field, and then 6 months in the rear. They'd find a rear job for you. That never happened with me. I did my whole tour in the jungle. I didn't know it was my last mission, but when I got back to that, I looked up on the bulletin board, and I was leaving the next day. So I did my whole tour in the jungle. I never got my rear job, nothing.
Now, what was the response of your team when you told them you were leaving?
I had a very good platoon leader. The whole platoon was, you know, on stand down, and he presented me a lighter with my nickname on it and everything, and I got to make a little speech. In a way, it was kind of hard to leave, you know, but I watched, you know, the guys before me leave, and it's very bittersweet. You want to leave, but again, you become so close to these guys, and you feel for them. It was very bittersweet, but you know, I was very happy to leave. But again, I was sad too. So what are you going to do?
All right. And then physically, how did they get you back to the States?
It's amazingly fast. Again, we had to out-process, so I had to go to brigade headquarters at Camp Evans. Then I think I had to go to Camp Eagle, process out of there. Fubai, the whole thing was repeated in reverse. Then they flew us to Cam Bay and processed out of the country. So it took about a day to get all that done, and then you were on a plane and back to Fort Lewis, Washington, where they issued you your new uniform, and you got a steak dinner, and the people that waited on you were the people going over to Vietnam, and they had a million questions for you. I mean, but you got to pick out your steak, and then, you know, they gave you your back pay, and off to the airport you went, you made your things, and you were home. I was home within 36 hours of leaving Camp Evans. I was home, sitting in my living room.
Oh. Now, and the route that you took, did you encounter any, like, you know, work protesters at the airport or things like that?
No, I was, well, number one, I got very drunk at Seattle Airport, and I had to wait 8 hours for my plane, and so what else was there to do? And I was very lucky, but I didn't get a non-stop flight. You know, I didn't care, but our plane must have stopped at every airport from Seattle, Washington to New York City. You know, we stopped in Cleveland, we stopped in Detroit, we stopped somewhere else too. But, you know, and I landed in New York City because my oldest sister lived in Manhattan, and I didn't know how I was going to get to her apartment. But I was sitting next to a guy that was going home on leave, and he said his mother was picking him up at the airport, and his mother said she would take me there, and she did. I got a ride all the way from Kennedy Airport to downtown Manhattan. So I surprised everybody in my family one at a time. Nobody knew when I was coming home. I wouldn't tell them.
All right. Now, you've got a fairly extensive collection of photographs and so forth from your time in the service. How easy or hard was it for a guy in a recon unit to be carrying a camera?
I was the only one that had the camera, and I carried it in my side pocket.
Well, how did you, and was it easy to get film or get things developed?
No.
Or?
I bought the camera at the PX in Camp Evans because it came with a roll of film. But every time I got into the rear to go to the PX to get film, there was never any film. So I asked my mother to send me film, and it was my mother would have been the greatest supply sergeant in the world. She sent me, I got more care packages than anybody. How she did it, I don't. She told me she spent $1,100 just in postage to send all those packages to Vietnam. And my mother was a waitress.
All right. Now this tape is about out, so we're going to stop right here.
Yeah, they developed them right there at Camp Evans.
All right. And then did you send pictures home?
Mm-hmm. Everybody in my family would get a portion of the pictures. And then they would all get together, and my youngest sister put them all in albums for me.
All right. Now, once you, I guess now, because you were in the jungle all the time, you did not see much of the civilian population in Vietnam at all?
No.
Because your areas didn't really have people.
Well, we only got a one-day stand down, and they didn't want you to leave. You couldn't leave Camp Evans unless you had a medical condition, which could be treated maybe at Camp Eagle. And even then, you would have to go to the gate, and the MP would flag somebody down and ask if they were going to Camp Eagle, and then you'd get a ride.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't even let us out of Camp Evans.
All right. Now, once you get back to the States, you're home, you've been discharged, what do?
I went back to my old job.
All right. Now, when you came back, did you talk to people about your experiences in Vietnam?
Well, my close friends, I wrote them all letters. They knew what I was doing. So they already knew, so they didn't, not too many people asked me questions.
All right. Now, at what point did you start to just sort of talk more to people about what you saw or share more of your stories?
That started in the 1980s. There was a school teacher who I'd never met. He called him our local American Legion, and he wanted to know if there were any Vietnam vets that would like to talk to the kids. And, they recommended me, and the teacher called me up. I'm a very private person. At first I wasn't going to do it, and plus I was just talking to this guy on the phone, and he told me he'd had all kind of Vietnam vets come in and talk to his students. He said he even had a draft dodger come in, which I wasn't too crazy about that aspect. So I didn't know what this teacher was looking for. He said he had politicians come in, he had draft dodgers come in, he had soldiers that were against the war that came in. He wanted to know if there was somebody that was, somebody I guess like me. And I was reluctant, but I said to the teacher, I'll tell you what, I'll do it, but I have to meet you face to face. We'll sit down and have a little talk, and if we hit it off, I'll do it. If we don't hit it off, I'm not doing it. And this teacher, and this guy worked, he was a teacher and he drove a taxi cab at night. He came over to my house. He said he could only stay for about an hour, but he ended up staying for 4 hours. And we talked, and when we were done, I says, okay, I'll do it. I said, you want me to make up some kind of little game plan? And he says, no, you just do what we just did. And so I said, okay, when do you want me? He says, how about tomorrow? And I did. And he combined 2 of his classes, and that's still the favorite class I ever did. They were very smart kids. I can't say enough about the high school kids. They want to know. And you can't BS them. They know. They're smart, but they want to know what you went through. One of the kids in his class was a foreign exchange student from Israel. And she was a young girl. She was 18. She was her senior year. And when I was done, all the kids came up. They wanted to talk more, and they all shook my hand. But this girl says, Mr. Mihalko, she says, when I graduate, I'm going back to Israel, and I will be going, it's mandatory, male or female, to be in their army. She says, nobody's heard of John Mihalko in Israel, but when I get there, people are going to know who you are. And that made me feel 10 feet tall. But all the kids were that way. And then they asked me to come back, and I went back again a couple weeks later. they all took up a collection and gave me money, which I didn't want to take. I said, no. They insisted I take the money, and I donated it to our Ripcord Association, but that's just the kind of kids they were. I mean, amazing. And but I've had so many great experiences. I've been lecturing for like 25 years now. I'm still doing it in Colorado today. I've never had a bad class. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Now, are there stories or things that you make a point of including in those presentations that we managed to leave out of this interview so far?
No, what I do is I give them a brief overview of what I did, and then I want questions from them, you know, and in all truthfulness, girls ask better questions than boys. All the boys want to hear about is blood and guts, but girls really make me think. So, but no, I love doing that. I've been doing it for a long time, you know.
Now, did you encounter much hostility or whatever because you were a Vietnam veteran? Did that create a problem for you at points? Or
not in my town. I told you I'm from Whippany, New Jersey. Even the town Whippany comes from an Indian name. It means the land of the willows, willow trees. The people from my town even fought in the French and Indian War. We weren't even a country yet. It's a very patriotic little town, so I didn't have any problems, you know, going back. Like I said, I went back to the job I had, and but as I traveled, yeah, I could see hostility. I mean, a lot of the old veterans didn't want anything to do with us. But I think that's true in all wars, because I know the World War I guys looked down on the World War II guys, and the Korean guys are the quietest. Well, a lot of them fought in World War II and Korea, or Korea and Vietnam. The Korean guys are the quietest. See, the Vietnam guys, most of us, we're outspoken, you know. And I'm sure there was Vietnam guys that looked down on the Desert Storm guys because that thing was over so fast, I mean. But that was over fast because our country learned the mistakes from Vietnam. I firmly believe that. You know, they went in it, they went into it to win it, and they won it. And,
in that case, got out again. Yeah. All right. When you look back at the time that you spent in the service, so what kind of effect do you think that had on you in the end?
I value each and every day. I'm still the same person I was, but I enjoy things more. When I came home, when I got into my house, I turned on the water. I watched the water run, and then I turned it off real quick because I didn't want to waste it. But it was nice seeing running water. I opened the refrigerator and said, wow, man, I don't have to carry 90 pounds on my back anymore. Things like that. I couldn't sleep in a bed for a long time. I slept on the floor for months. So and that part has changed me, but no, I'm still the same person. I still have the same beliefs and ideals, and, you know.
All right. Well, you've got a good story. You've had plenty of practice telling it, but you do a good job. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. That there is a wrap.